Welcome, everyone. Firstly, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It is a very, very exciting day, a day 2 years in the making at least. But today we're very excited to launch Breakthrough AI. And for us, it's a new kind of AI education, an opportunity for us to move slightly away from what we do through our government contracts and our work with corporates, and to do a form of AI education that puts people first and really focuses on how every individual or every community can really prepare for the age of AI. But without further ado, let us introduce ourselves. Jasmine, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go. It's lovely to see everybody here, and thank you for taking an hour out of your day to celebrate essentially this launch with us. I'm Jasmine. I'm the head of marketing at Breakthrough, and I've been leading this project the past 6 months, really kind of taking Sobadan's vision for Breakthrough and helping bring it to life through this new platform. And we're really excited to bring it to everybody today.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name's Sobadan. I am CEO at Breakthrough. And yeah, it's a really exciting day. I think this platform is an opportunity for us to take what we deliver as forms of education and put it into something that anyone, anywhere in the world can access. And we're really excited to take you on this journey.
So just a little bit, I guess, about why we're here and what this event is for. So it should be no surprise to anybody that AI really has shifted from kind of a specialized tool into everyday infrastructure. It's shaping work, decisions, culture even, and adoption has really accelerated faster than anybody's understanding, which is leaving a lot of people kind of guessing about these systems. Nobody's really fully able to grasp what they are, what they're doing, why we need to be using them. And it's getting to the point where it's no longer just kind of enough to know how to use AI, but you need to be able to use it effectively, adopt it, and be able to adapt with it. And so Breakthrough AI was created to meet this shift and expand the conversation beyond kind of efficiency into agency, sovereignty, and human judgment, which are our core values. And this is really not a replacement of any existing education, but just kind of an evolution that's really trying to address what's missing in the space right now. And because we know that the future is going to happen regardless. So we want to get ahead of it and be able to shape what we're building and what we're experiencing, and be able to participate in that as well.
And the biggest thing that I think we can all feel is that we're living through a moment in history. It's something that feels really weird. Like whether we look at it from sort of an international geopolitical lens, or we look at it through our individual life experiences. I think for me, growing up, you saw the rise of social media and smartphones, but there's something about AI that feels somewhat different, in whether it's like the passing of the Turing test and the fact that LLMs can actually convince us that they're human, or the fact that we use these tools in a way that almost takes up space with our human intelligence. Like I've been at events where they've spoken about AI being in the boardroom with senior executives, and you can feel that today. But it not only changes the way individuals live, it changes the way businesses interact and governments interact with us. So we really want to be able to name that shift and be able to sort of utilize it for the benefit of all mankind. And I know that sounds super ambitious, but for anyone involved in AI or AI alignment, you know this idea of human values, right? And fundamentally at Breakthrough, we believe that human values is something that exists regardless of the country you're born in, regardless of the background you're from. And it's not something that should be decided purely by politicians or those in power. It should be decided by each and every single one of us. And we want to be able to go on that journey with our learners. And fundamentally, that's what this is about, which is bringing our learners on the journey to name that shift with us and to live through it in a way that benefits us socially, economically, but also personally. One of the things that we've seen time and time again through our work at Breakthrough is most conversations about AI, when learners join our boot camps and want to talk about AI, there's a real big focus on efficiency, speed, and productivity. It's fundamentally the language of capitalism, or the language of big businesses across the world. Like government talks about this as well. It's like, how quickly can we get people public services using AI? How quickly are we able to implement AI technologies to improve our bottom lines? But the reality is very few people are asking about what it means for us as human beings. What does it mean in a world where we can automate most useful work? What does it mean in a world where robotics are being used for manual labor? What does that mean for us as individuals and for us as a species? And one of the things we've recognized is whether that's the learning we offer through government or through corporates, that focus on employment and economic outcomes isn't going to disappear, which is where Breakthrough AI exists as that alternative, where we can ask those deeper questions. Because fundamentally, if AI isn't beneficial for our human experience, then we should ask what is its utility as a technology. And it's why Breakthrough exists. Now, we can look at sort of inequality on a global scale, and we can see that over 50% of the world live on less than $7 a day. The percentage of people, again, is very similar when it comes to those who don't have access to hardware or software. But what we see is that AI could act as a democratizing technology, the same way the internet has. And it's why Breakthrough exists, is if we're able to provide people with the education so that they can use AI with confidence, conscience, and creativity, we believe that a better world is possible, one that's more abundant, more healthy, and one that allows us to really embody this idea of human values. Breakthrough fundamentally does this through the work we do with underserved groups and through making this knowledge as accessible as possible. But Breakthrough AI is building upon that and creating a new layer on that allows us to scale and impact more lives and to really open people's minds to the possibilities for the future. Because I think, the present moment is what it is, but the future isn't promised. It's something that we can still shape. And a lot of the times, if we're able to shape it through education and the acquisition of knowledge, it's definitely something to aspire towards.
So this is what Sobhanan has just said is really kind of the bigger picture behind everything that we do. And it's taking the people through a journey of AI education and taking them through essentially a transformation of sorts, and seeing that AI education is not just a skill acquisition, but it's really your journey that you go on. And in this age, really, if you have capability, you can have as much capability as you want, but without any kind of consciousness or awareness, it can be risky because you don't know what is capable with those skills alone. And so really our vision is an education that helps to strengthen judgment and not just your dependence on these tools. And as much as technology keeps evolving, we need to as well. And that's why Breakthrough is here. We're here to support that kind of evolution and adaptation.
Totally. And fundamentally, like, human transformation is the goal of all education, right? Like, when we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and this idea of self-actualization, it's become more possible than ever through the use of these technologies. But again, when we see today's world, we see whether it's the rise of billionaires or the sort of tech feudalism that we see in society, we can see how we're heading in the wrong direction in some ways to a more polarized world where these technologies are used to control, dominate, used for sort of forces of violence as opposed to the good of our species. And I think that's really what we want to focus on, which is like the individual transformation is what leads to the collective transformation.
Yeah, so kind of this is the simplest way to explain why Breakthrough AI exists, and it's to democratize understanding and access to AI. And it's really not about what we're selling at all, but it's more about what we stand for. And our mission is not to make people faster with these tools. It's to make you more capable and conscious and creative in this age that we're moving towards. And so to democratize access and understanding does come first in that process. And without access, access without understanding does lead to then creating kind of this dependency on these tools. And to us, the access really does mean more than tools. It means your language, it means your confidence, and it means the choice that you have to participate freely in society. And the confidence here comes from the deeper understanding of what's happening and what's going on. It's not about shortcuts or cutting corners. And it's not, we found that people lack the ability to understand what's going on, but there's a real lack of clarity about what this moment means. And so that's really why we do focus on a deeper understanding, because that fundamentally helps with your confidence. And if you're able to understand how these systems work, and then your fear around it all reduces and your agency is able to increase. And about your conscious, and learning how these AI systems really encode values, whether we want them to or not, that's just the way that they work. And so your conscious really means learning to be able to engage thoughtfully with all of this. You don't want to just go about your day blindly and passively and not really know why you're doing what you're doing or how you've been influenced to act in those ways. So through this, we're trying to help people ask better questions. You know, what are these systems optimizing for? Who is benefiting from the way that this system is designed, and what are the trade-offs that you're making, and by participating in it this way that is like that. And then lastly, creativity. Someone did a talk on this a couple weeks ago about how AI really expands human creativity. There's a common conversation going on right now about how creativity AI is harming creativity, but instead, if you're able to implement all of these, this deeper understanding, you'll be able to see that actually it's not replacing creativity. And while automation is easy, it's the human judgment aspect and imagination that are the more valuable aspects of creativity. And so we're really trying to teach you how to use AI as a collaborator and not as a substitute for any kind of thinking.
I think the key thing to mention is like loads of organizations are here to teach you tools, right? If you wanted to learn how to use ChatGPT, you could go on OpenAI's website. If you wanted to learn how to use Claude, you could go on Anthropic's website. The key thing that we wanted to do differently is that to help people think more clearly, and understanding that clarity of thinking is necessary to avoid chaos. I think we always make the joke at Breakthrough, which is like where everything feels chaotic, like if we were to optimize and automate that, fundamentally would be automating chaos. And you can imagine that in today's society, right? If we were to automate the way society currently works, we would be automating social inequality. We would be automating geopolitical conflict. Like these things shouldn't be automated. We should recognize how to solve them prior, but we really believe that starts on an individual level before it starts on a collective level. David, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we need to train people to become critical thinkers rather than users, because not everything, like you say, should be automated. And if someone's a critical thinker, we can assimilate whether we're just trying to save time and remove responsibility. But if we're critical thinkers, we can understand why we're doing stuff and why we're using stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. An amazing point. I think one of the things to recognize through all of that is human discernment is like something we can train. It's something we could teach. Again, I was watching something about Peter Thiel just before this, and sorry to go off on a tangent as usual, but Peter Thiel is like a great example of someone who uses people's inability to critically think about issues to essentially use and manufacture control. And we have to recognize that we live in a time where these tools can be used for the betterment of humanity, or they could be used for at the detriment. But it's up to each and every single one of us. I think the famous quote about the Second World War is that evil happens when good men stand by and do nothing. And I think with technologies, for example, like social media, it would have been very difficult to predict the sort of societal ills caused by social media unless we were looking in hindsight. Whereas that when we really reflect today, we can start to see some of the issues that AI could create, but what do we do about it, and how do we empower normal people from across the world to participate in this, and to participate in a way that does allow them to critically think and to make change. So agency in practice. Now, there's that question that you should ask yourself if you're thinking about who in your life has the most agency. If you were stuck in a foreign prison and you had to call someone to get you out, who would that person be? And that person is the person with agency. It's the person who doesn't see obstacles, they see options. They see their ability to make independent and intentional choices in both the digital world and the real world. And they see that as like their prerogative, someone who really takes advantage of their free will. And when it comes to practice, so how that applies when it comes to learning AI, it's like knowing when to use AI and when not to, right? So simple things like, should you use AI to write every email, or to write poetry to your partner, or to tell your friend that to write your friend's birthday card? Now, of course, like there are moments you should and moments you shouldn't. How do you decide which one's the right moment? Systems that shape our decisions, whether that's cultural systems, governments, everything shapes our decisions, the way we think about the world. Even language shapes how we perceive ourselves and perceive others. Now, what does this mean for technologies like large language models or technologies like AGI? And I need like deliberate and intentional decisions as opposed to reacting automatically. For example, the biggest reason I use ChatGPT today is because it was the first LLM that you could really adopt and use, right? Whereas, is that the right decision 3 years on, or should I look to move on to another platform? And these kinds of questions, this intentional and deliberate thinking, is fundamentally how we have agency in the digital world. And we want to encourage people not to outsource their thinking, whether that's to a political party, whether that's to a specific worldview or philosophical viewpoint. It's much better to fundamentally nurture your thinking, to build it from scratch, as opposed to thinking that you have to have it one way or another. The next pillar is sovereignty. Now, when we talk about sovereignty, people tend to think of royal families or countries, but it's also around individual sovereignty. There's a really good book written by, for those of you who know Jacob Rees-Mogg, the conservative politician, his father, called The Sovereign Individual. And this idea of sovereignty fundamentally comes down to ownership. So this could be ownership of your data, your attention, your income, or your direction. Now, fundamentally in the past, sovereignty was this idea of like, you own land, or, you're a sovereign nation state within another. But this idea of individual sovereignty is what we see changing. Today you can belong to a global population as opposed to a national one. You can participate in a digital economy as opposed to a national economy. This is the point around sovereignty, is that next stage from agency. Agency is remembering you have a choice. No matter where you are in life, no matter the situation you're in, you have a choice, and you can exert your own decisions, your own actions to change the circumstances you're in. Sovereignty is the next layer up. It's about having some control. Now, when we think about your data, that could be your personal data, the platforms you hold. You could use both legal regulations like GDPR to protect that, or your own decisions about how you interact with those platforms. Your attention, and I think this is the biggest one in today's world. Our attention is fundamentally so fragmented, but it's the most valuable resource we have. We have to think that, in life, you have time and you've got attention, right? Time will always move forward. 1 second at a time, you're always getting closer, sorry to be morbid, but till the day you die. But the reality is that your attention is the other resource, which is limited. It's finite. While you're awake, while you're engaged in things, you have attention. Now, how are you using that attention, and what is it that you're directing it towards? Income in your direction. We've been told that the best career path is to find employment, and very traditional employment, whereas today the rise of the portfolio career, or the creator career, or the solopreneur, and we can see that there's an abundance of choice today. And now, how do we control ourselves into the right directions? And the reason it matters is that today platforms are monetizing our attention in ways that we don't fully understand. We have people creating AI generated content for political parties to convince people down specific viewpoints, fundamentally to polarize us in our own nation state. So thinking about, how do we avoid that? How do we curate our experiences so our attention doesn't get hijacked? Systems encoding values. We can see this today with platforms like X compared to Blue Sky, or we compare X to LinkedIn, and we can see that systems are encoding values that shape our behavior. They shape the way we live and think. And fundamentally, we live in these echo chambers. We live in little bubbles of reality that are shaped by these systems, by companies that earn millions off the backs of our attention. And what do we do about it? How do we navigate this? Finally, power dynamics and power structures. We can see that currently AI and other technologies are embedding and almost consolidating the same power structures that have caused harm to humanity for generations. How do we return that power back to the individual, and how do we return it back to the collective? And it's just remembering that sovereignty is not something about isolation. When we think about the sovereign nation state, we think about a nation that might want to conquer others or maintain its borders or whatever else. It's conscious participation, because fundamentally, the one truth we can all agree on in this call is that we're all human beings. And I would like to think, as human beings, our collective well-being of our species is the most important to us. And how do we consciously participate in that? Finally, human first technology. So when we think about optimizing for speed, efficiency, and automation, it's not very human first. We can see how that's happened over, the Industrial Revolution, right? You wanted humans to work in factories, so it was all about them doing small parts of the process, about them getting efficient. So the factory owner could maximize his profits, maximize his revenue, and minimize his costs. Today, we do not need to live like that. We do not need technology to be fundamentally profit first, or about driving returns to owners at the cost of everyone else. What we need is technology that understands human well-being, an approach to a human quality of life that we all aspire towards. but it's recognizing that comes from judgment, ethics, and reflection. You know, when we think about companies like Meta, who fundamentally made their social media platforms as addictive as possible, that is more akin to the thinking of a drug dealer as opposed to an entrepreneur, because fundamentally it's not about the benefit of its users, it's about keeping them hooked for as long as possible. But we can only start to keep companies accountable with that type of thinking when we think better and we don't focus on, you know, results or getting things done faster or efficiency. Fundamentally, we've all been trained to think that our career denotes our self-worth, or the amount of money we make will make our life better. But fundamentally changing that approach is necessary, because if technology doesn't enhance humanity, it will fundamentally make it worse. Like, the idea that companies aren't trying to replace their workers with AI is a false premise, because for anyone here who knows, who's done economics or business, you know that the best way for a company to increase its profit margins is to get rid of its staff. And if AI is cheaper than people, then the decision will eventually be made, because that's the way our system currently exists. That's the way reality currently exists. So we have to think about how we elevate humanity. And when I say this, I mean all of humanity, not just the people who live in our country or the people who look like us or sound like us. I mean the people across the world. You can see this in, you know, Meta's use of content moderators, from outsourcing content moderators in the US or the UK to parts of Africa, because the labor is cheaper, the ethics are much more in a gray area. So you can fundamentally subject people to quite horrific working conditions while keeping your profits high and not having any legal trouble. And how do we change that as a principle, so future generations look back on the age of AI or this AI revolution and think this was the inflection point or the turning point for humanity, and not a point where we automated our own decline?
So that kind of moves us on nicely to this new learning ecosystem that we've created. And we've really tried to show how, or give people different options on how they would like to learn. Because obviously everybody's at a different moment in their journey. So we wanted to kind of honor that and give you the space to choose what kind of learning option would be best for you. And so we have our free learning options. So that's kind of where a lot of people would probably choose to begin. If you're not really sure how you feel about AI in general, and what's important to you, what matters to you, you're a bit skeptical of things. And we're going to break down like all the offerings after. I'm just kind of quickly going through the different options here. So that's the free one. And again, it's based on, focused on your orientation and your familiarity, the language around AI. We want to reduce fear and improve your understanding before you were to actually commit to anything. And then we have our self-paced learning options. So these are kind of, think about a course that you would buy online, and it's for people who you think you want to go a little bit deeper, but at your own pace, because they're self-paced. You go module through module, and this is kind of where you take your awareness and you take it to the next step with adding this extra intention of choosing to allocate time and focus on it. And it's really focused on understanding what these tools are, and then how to make choices around those. And it's really helping, trying to, again, build the confidence that's grounded in understanding. And then lastly, we have our live cohort options. So we have 2 of those. And this is kind of for those that like to learn in a group setting. So if you've been through our boot camps, you can maybe appreciate how learning in a group setting can be beneficial for some. And it's kind of in that community focused mindset, and being able to apply these ideas that you're learning to real work, and workshop these ideas and with our who's leading them. So there we go. So we talked about obviously these ideas, but now taking them into action, we went through the kind of core pillars, what the designs are, the learning environments. So we will get into the actual courses themselves. So the first ones we'll go through is our free learning pathways. So maybe some of you here have partaken in the AI Literate to AI Fluent email course that we've run. We've run 2 versions of that. We're going to do another one starting on February 1st. And so this is kind of an easy way. It is delivered straight to your inbox for 2 weeks straight. And it takes you through moving from like surface awareness to understanding how AI works, how we can use it in our daily lives, how it's probably being used already that you might not know of, and asking better questions to get better results. So kind of like that garbage in, garbage out mentality, and choosing the right tools for what you need, building your critical thinking, which we were talking about, and ethical awareness, and a bit about human creativity. Stuff like that is covered in that 2-week course, and it is completely free. And if I don't worry, we're going to send out all the links and everything to these options after in like a follow-up email. But if you, again, have any questions on them, just let us know at the end. And then the other free option that we have really is going back to our fundamental belief that there should be a basic introductory level of AI education available to everybody free of charge, because it shouldn't be a privilege to understand how AI works. And so we have our AI for All introductory course, which is a quick and structured course on what AI is, how it works, what's possible, but also what its limitations are, and stuff like that. So that's just our free courses there. And someone else is going to talk a bit about why free is important.
So free access to us, the reason it's important, the reason Breakthrough started with government contracts or the UN's AI Skills Coalition is fundamentally like, I wish we could just teach everyone around the world for free every day. Like fundamentally the idea that money is an obstacle to helping people with AI or just understand the digital economy is fundamentally quite an inconvenient barrier. But the reason free access matters to us is like, people aren't all going to be ready to commit time or money. And, you know, that's the reason we have those AI Skills Coalition courses. We'll still be bidding for government contract. Like, this is a key part of the pathway for us. It's if we can be creative in the way we can get education to people, that's important, because not everyone's going to be ready to commit time or money. Again, like trust is massive. I remember when I first started talking to my parents about AI, they thought like I was a little bit crazy. I remember the first time I got to speak to them in Tamil, they were shocked, right? And so skepticism about AI education is entirely rational. Skepticism about AI is rational. I've spoken to doctors who've had 30 years in their field, and they are very, very skeptical. They don't believe AI could be helpful or useful to them in their specific circumstances. So trust takes time, and we must recognize that both as an organization and a community. And finally, understanding first. It's if we can have a conversation with someone that allows them to understand the importance of participating in AI, then that awareness fundamentally removes fear and creates choice for them. Whether that choice is to learn with another provider or to Google things or to go on YouTube, that choice is what we're trying to create, that agency. And finally, it's like this idea of being technical. I always ask this in sessions I deliver. There's only around 47 million people in the world who know how to program, right? Now, when we think about this as like just a baseline, 47 million out of 7 odd billion is not a massive number of people. So fundamentally, this idea that you need to be technical to be AI fluent, to engage in this, is false. The naivety or the latent perspective is as if not more important than anyone who works in this space. And that's what we're here to do. Free access helps to provide clarity. And if we can give a learner clarity and some form of agency through that journey, that is the most important thing that we can do. So what makes Breakthrough different? And I think like for anyone who's done our boot camps, you probably know, for anyone who's learned with us in the past or even watched our content, you're probably aware, right? Like for us, we care about productivity. We care about the economic outcomes. We care about getting people jobs, helping them set up businesses. But fundamentally, we recognize to be a human being is to fundamentally have a responsibility to the rest of our species, to mankind at large. And it's thinking of like teaching people how to think in a world where you can prompt AI to do things for you is the important prerequisite. You know, people are worried that kids aren't going to be able to write essays anymore, or they're not going to be able to participate in coursework the same way. And I think that's a bit of a false dichotomy, right? Fundamentally, these kids are going to be better thinkers because they would have had 1,001 iterations of viewpoints and ways of viewing the world, of completing work, of understanding things that our generation didn't, because we had to sit there and type out our dissertations. And I'm not saying this is not a critique to any universities, but the point being is like having agency in today's world is like fundamentally stepping away from everyone else, figuring it out and coming back. And, you know, the term I would use to like to talk to learners about this is like sometimes you have to leave the village to come back to the village with useful information, but now the village just lives online. And I think the key thing to remember is like the future doesn't belong to the most automated. We live in an attention economy. You know, people can do very silly things on the internet and become massively famous and then use that to generate both economic and social influence. But those who are most aware, those who are most conscious, who recognize sometimes the futility of engaging with viewpoints and trying to figure out things themselves is the most important. And I think that's where the future belongs to, the most aware and people who understand that, you know, this is a species-wide issue.
So moving on to the next offerings that we have, they kind of are intended to take you on this journey that we've been talking about this whole session. So we have our 3 self-paced course offerings. So the first that we have is the Breaking into the Digital Economy. And that is your basic, what the digital economy is, how it works, where AI fits in, where you fit in. And you've probably seen those videos online that's like how I made 100K from selling XYZ or something like that. And you're like, well, what? I want that to be me. Can it really be that hard? So, but it's not a new thing. It's just, again, with the spread of social media, it's being advertised more. And so operating in the digital economy for years, and yes, then these people have their courses that take you step by step through that process. But if you don't necessarily follow that process or want to sell exactly what they're selling or in the format they're selling, it's essentially kind of useless for you to take. So we built this program or this course, and it's like almost like a mini business school where you can go in a way from understanding to understanding the digital economy, what it is, to participating in it. And we even have like a module on where you can make a real business plan, and like a worksheet and working through that, because that's something that, I mean, I've never learned, or I don't know anybody that has like easily accessible like ways to do that and actually sit down and go step by step through it. And another thing to mention is that all of these courses themselves like have different worksheets and reflections and stuff. So there is that aspect of being able to actually go through the material, reflecting it and connecting back to your actual life and how it applies to you, which is one thing that I find really advantageous about these self-paced courses. The next is our digital independence course. So this really focuses on your participation in the digital economy, to ownership over what you see, what your daily practices are, and how you can really have this mindset shift. And the common thread through all of these, which you can probably tell, is agency, your autonomy, and the purpose that you want to have. So really focusing on kind of the tangible ways to build your agency, making sure that you can proactively take those steps for your well-being, aware of what's happening around you, why you're being shown, what you're being shown, and how you can change it. So really, you would kind of leave this course ideally, hopefully knowing like what is being shown to you on your certain like social media feeds being shown to you, why are you getting certain ads, like just things like that we kind of just accept without questioning. So being able to just go through your daily life being like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand that now. And then the last one that we have is our Designing a Sovereign Future course. So that relates back to the idea of the sovereign individual that Sobadan was talking about earlier. And this course really builds on from moving from individual agency to the systems thinking, that village mindset, and going beyond just you as an individual, seeing how there's different structures that are shaping society and how they do that. And it introduces what Sobadan has coined the Silicocene, and using this as a lens to critique power, systems, and ethics. So if you've not read about the Silicocene before, definitely recommend it. We'll add some links there. And if you like kind of like critical thinking, philosophy, and questioning why things are the way they are, then I would say this course is definitely for you. And yeah, it gets into, like Sobhanan was saying, like attention economy, the economics of attention, which I find really fascinating, especially as somebody that does marketing, and learning about how and why this is such a big idea. And the course even goes into things like meditation and stuff like that. And so hopefully you can get an idea of why these courses are different. And yes, we do teach some tools, but arguably what is the most important thing is reframing your thinking and improving your agency so you can adapt for whatever comes next. You're not feeling left confused. And I see that David put in, yes, I was just about to get on the prices of them because I'm sure that's what people are curious about. And so we really have tried to make them accessible as possible, but the fact that we are a business and we are trying to use this to help support our other ventures. And so each course here is $39.99. And we are offering also like a bundle discount if you wanted to buy Journey as all three. But if you wait until the end of this meeting, then everybody may get a special little discount code as a thank you for joining today. So yes, we'll talk about more about that at the end. And then apart from the self-paced courses, we also have our Maven Accelerator programs. So I'm not sure if anybody in this call has participated. We've run one of each of these already. And the first one is building a purpose-led brand in the age of AI. And so what these programs are meant to do is really offer that different learning environment for those who prefer that kind of community aspect, having a live facilitator that you can ask questions to, having that like focused time that you really go through this content. So that's what these courses are for. So the first one is, building a purpose-led brand in the age of AI. And that kind of talks about how the idea of personal brands are everywhere now. There's a lot of people saying how standard careers and jobs are going to be changing and we're moving to a more skills-based economy. And this is really where your personal brand comes in. And in an AI-driven world, your authenticity and your brand really does become a signal of trust and what people are going to gravitate towards too. And doesn't mean you can't use AI to amplify it, but you need to be really clear on who you are and what you're wanting to offer before you can even think about using AI, or you're just going to amplify kind of a confusing brand that's going to hurt you more in the long term. And so this course really focuses on getting really clear about that, where we go through kind of lived experience, your story, your values. We have activities that you go through, what you stand for, some different frameworks, and then you actually go, Sobhanan leads that one, and you go through and you actually make a brand playbook that you can put into action and take away from that course. And I mean, it's great being able to learn from Sobhanan because he does have a very, I would say, substantial following. So he knows what he's doing, and he's definitely built it through authenticity. So that is that one. And then the next one that we have is our humanity and AI. So that's creating change in the real world. So this is really for any educators, if technologists, change makers who you want to use AI and understand AI in a responsible way that you can actually drive real meaningful change. And so really focusing on the ethical, human-centered impact of AI, not just learning the tools. And we really tried to focus on building this course around real problems and things like identity bias, fairness, privacy, accountability in AI systems. And so you'll really learn about responsible design, evaluation, and focusing on using human-centered frameworks. And then the practical outcome that you get from this course is you kind of walk away with a project that you want to implement, how you can responsibly plan this, and some skills to lead ethical and impact-oriented initiatives, again, with no technical skills required. And I will say that both of these cohorts are open for enrollment. We'll again share the links. These ones are a bit more than the other courses. Are building a purpose-led brand is £199, and the humanity and AI is £299. Both of those courses are a week and 2 weeks long. And the best part about them is you get to really learn directly with the facilitators and the group in small group settings, and can speak to each other about the topics, and which I know some people prefer to do over self-paced. But also you will get a discount code for those courses if you stick around till the end. And then we do want to just briefly get into, as we've been talking about, how important access and free education is to us. And so even though the majority of what I've just gone through are paid offerings, it doesn't mean that we want anyone to be excluded for financial reasons. So we've worked really hard to find a model that it works for us, but also works for everybody else, and keeping the courses as accessible as possible. As obviously a cost is unfortunately a barrier for a lot of people. So we're offering a number of limited spaces, subsidized places on all of our courses, and they're prioritized for marginalized or underrepresented communities in technology and AI, learners from low or middle income countries, students, career changers, early stage entrepreneurs, and people who really want to use AI for a positive social impact. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I really do want to take these courses, but I'm not sure I'm currently at a stage where I can necessarily afford it, we do have on our website, which I think Pratisha will share it now in the chat, you can go to our website and you can fill out the financial support form, and a member of our team will assess the applications against. We have a predetermined kind of set of guidelines, and then we'll respond accordingly for each given situation. And I just wanted to do a little bit about why kind of the courses are even paid in the first place, because obviously the current way that Breakthrough operates is through free education. So why are we even introducing paid offerings? But hopefully you've got a little bit of a sense of that throughout the presentation. But we are operating this buy one give one model, which means that with your purchase, whoever purchases any of our offerings, you're granting the opportunity for someone else in our Breakthrough community to also gain access to these courses as well. And to give you a bit of assurance on if you're having an impact, we do reinvest all of our funds back into the company because we have a legal profit lock. So that essentially means that we have a legal obligation to invest our profit, 100% of our profit, back into the company, and it doesn't get paid out elsewhere. So you can really be assured that any purchase that you make is going to the improved access for others. So Bron, I don't know if you want to add anything on that point.
Yeah, of course. So the 100% profit and asset lock is is for limited companies by shares, for anyone who knows anything about company law. So a limited company by shares can pay its directors dividends or can distribute profits, right? So we've essentially put a profit and asset lock on that because we want all of our profits to be redirected towards supporting underserved learners across the world. Now, just to give you guys perspective on how stark the issue is UK government can pay anywhere between £2,000 to £5,000 a learner to have them on a boot camp. But to support someone, say, when we did our East Africa boot camp, that might cost us at Breakthrough, say, £50 or £40 a learner to get them through. So you see that real disparity across the world, right? But there's less money to support those in East Africa with AI skills training than there is to support people in the UK or the US or Europe. And what we fundamentally want to do is have a business model that allows us to both support people across the world, support people in the UK, and fundamentally not be reliant on single contracts or single contracts or single organizations to do that. So it's really about having this sort of new approach to social impact where your money allows you to learn, but at the same time benefits someone who may be in a situation that where learning feels all near enough impossible. And to give you perspective, that East Africa program was to over 300 learners, some of which were cooperative farmers, virtual assistants, students across Kenya and Uganda. And it gives you perspective that, you know, what we do here can go a long way in other parts of the world. And that's really what we want to do, because that's what we believe will help to make the future as equitable as possible.
Sure. So I also just wanted to do a little bit more about like what's to come, because obviously we're super excited to be launching this today. It's been a lot of hard work in the making, but there's still, like, this isn't all that we're going to be launching. So we're going to, like everybody here, we're going to be trying to constantly evolve and trying to get better with what we're offering, how we're offering it. So I talked about the AI for All course. So we're just putting the final touches on this, and then we're hoping to have it out by next week. So it's currently not out yet, but it will be shortly. Also, something that obviously is really important to access is being able to take our courses in different languages. So we are working to have our courses accessible in different languages. They're only currently available in English, but this is a key part of democratizing education. So that is something that we are working towards as well. And then an expansion of courses, the ones that I went through, and the self-paced and the accelerator programs have all been taken from conversations that we've had with previous learners. And we want to keep creating content that's really useful for you. For us, it's not about just putting out courses and content that is just to increase what we have out there and the volume. And we want it to be actually practical and useful. So if anybody ever has an idea for any courses that you would like to see, please don't hesitate to let us know. I put the email there at the bottom, which is ai@wearebreakthrough.org. And you can find that on the website as well. You can always get in touch. We're always happy to talk, because we're not just trying to add courses for the sake of it. We want them to be intentional and have value, because that's our priority on that. So like I promised, we wanted to give everybody a special thank you for joining us. So we're going to, don't worry if you don't catch it now, but we're going to send out an email after this with the recording and all the links to the different courses, that you can look more into them. But with the individual self-paced courses, you can use the code LAUNCH at checkout for whatever one you select, and you'll get 50% off your first course. So that is 50% off £39, so you get that for $19.99. And in my opinion, that is a bargain, because each of these courses are about like 10 to 12 hours. They're incredibly interactive. They have videos. You even get a nice video of Sobanon at the beginning of all of them, talking to you about the course as well. And that's for the first two, not the sovereign individual one yet. We still would like to ideally add some videos to that one. But yeah, so you can use that. And then also, like I mentioned, these courses are meant to be kind of taken in succession to each other, but we understand that not everybody is necessarily interested in every single course. But if you are, we do have them as a bundle, which we've called the Digital Futures Bundle, and you will receive 50% off the entire bundle if you put the Digital Futures in your cart and you use the code LAUNCH bundle. And that means you're just getting all 3 courses for the price of 2.5. So keep an eye out on your emails, and you can also get access through your email as well. And sorry, for the Maven courses, if you are interested in taking any of our Maven courses, there's different codes for those. So that will go out in the email as well. So keep an eye out for that.
And I want to ask, go on, were you going to say anything else? No? And I want to ask is like, just get involved. It doesn't matter like whether you've completed a boot camp, you're currently in a boot camp, whatever else. I think one of the nicest things about education generally is like And especially when it comes to things like AI, it's like people don't know what they don't know, right? I think only 39% of the UK use AI in their day-to-day work. So you think about the percentage of the UK, for example, who don't use that, and then you think about the rest of the world. So it's just sometimes like sharing something like, and again, it's like, it could be sharing the newsletter AI Literate to AI Fluent. It could be sharing the Breakthrough newsletter, giving us feedback. One of the things is like, we genuinely do view feedback as a gift at Breakthrough. If you come through to us and you're like, guys, absolutely hated the courses, you know, they didn't tell me this and I needed X, Y, Z, we're very happy to listen to that. So that, and also just sharing your ideas. I think a lot of the times when you're working in this space, you can have a very sort of unique perspective on AI or on the direction of travel. And it's always useful to get people's insights. Like, we appreciate your time attending today's event and appreciate your like continued engagement. But yeah, don't hesitate to approach us with ideas. We've had learners approach us with all sorts of ideas, from like setting up events to organizing webinars related to specific things to like setting up an AI consulting business. Like, all of these things are part of what allows us to grow the Breakthrough community. And fundamentally, that's what Breakthrough is. Like, as much as it's about the education and the learning and about AI, it's about humans connecting with each other to make the world a better place than where we found it. So yeah, just to end there, just really thank you, everyone. And we've got 8 or so minutes for questions, unless there was anything Jasmine wanted to add.